Yo, ciao guys, Carlo from Tagliamare here, and today, as promised in the announcement video, we are going to deep dive into the H.M. Sherbourne of 1763 by Vanguard Models. The H.M. Sherbourne was released earlier this year, so you might not find much content on it, but enough talk, let's get into it. The instruction booklet comprises an extensive 62 pages manual written in English. If English is not your first language, don't worry, given the technology advancements we have become accustomed to, this should not pose a challenge. The first 2 pages of the manual are dedicated to the tools the modeler needs to build the Sherbourne model. The listed tools are the basic tools you need for starting building a wooden ship model. We already saw most of them in one of my latest videos, Top 10 Ship Modeling Tools for Beginners. You can find the link in the description below the like button. Here we have a craft knife, a selection of needle files, a razor saw, a pin vise or an electric drill, a selection of drill bits, sanding blocks, paint brushes, very important, pliers, tweezers, rulers. In the first page, the 2 things that caught my attention are the reference the designer used and this tool called the pin pusher with adjustable depth stop. I've never used one and I think this might be interesting, so I will definitely look into it. The recommended glue is a Titebond, which I also recommend, and I used it extensively in the construction of the Fife, and of course a super glue. Moving forward into the next pages of the manual, I must be honest, this is the most detailed manual I've ever seen for a model intended for beginners. Each small step seems to be photographed and described in detail. Also, the part on the first and second planking is covered, and that's very impressive, because traditional kit manufacturers usually skip this part and let the modeler find out its own ways to do it. The gunwale, the deck, the inner bulwarks, the stern transom and other small details are engraved and they look fantastic. The deck hatches are made from pearwood as well and are the only thing that looks a bit off to me personally. They seem slightly out of scale, so I might think of making them from scratch. First time I see belaying racks and pins of the right size though. Additionally to the instruction manual, there are also 19 plans sheets, of which 8 rigging plans, each explaining the rigging in detail. So it's nearly impossible to make a mistake here. I believe this is also a huge help for starters. Very impressive. Wrapped together we find the dowels for the mast, the limewood strips for the first planking and the pearwood strips for the second planking. In a small box there are the ropes for the rigging in different sizes, the cannons, the swivel guns, the blocks, the nails and the winch. Cannons, anchors and the winch are made using a 3D printer. The only thing I would do myself from scratch here is just the ropes. The blocks are usable, but I will try to give them a proper shape. Anyway, overall I will try to stick to the manual. Let's examine now the pearwood board. The pearwood parts that go on top of the plywood are very thin, and you must handle them with care. Bulwarks are made from 0.8 mm plywood and are also engraved. The brass parts are minimal, as it should be, and the bulkheads and the keel and other support are made in MDF. Not the best material, but these parts won't be at the side, so it's okay. The main deck measures 26 cm and it is laser engraved. So guys, this was a great discovery. I'm really impressed about this model ship kit. Vanguard Model is clearly trying to shake the market from new techniques to new materials that you don't usually see in model kits. I'm very happy guys that you suggested this and I'm really looking forward to building it. I will see you next week with the first construction video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so that you won't miss the next issue. Thank you and goodbye. Ciao guys, welcome to this new episode. Today I'm going to go through the first construction stages of the HM Sherbourne of 1763. As I told you in the previous video of this series, I believe this is the perfect model for beginners model makers, and you're going to understand why in a moment. The techniques used in this model kit are totally different from what we are used to from more commercial model kits. You can notice this already by the number of bulkheads in this kit. 17 in total, plus all the other structure reinforcement and the materials type too. For this build, I will be following the manual as it is in order to check if there are any inconsistencies or pain points to report. It can help beginners in the construction of this model. In this episode, as you might have already understood, I'm going to build the whole structure and to install the pearwood transom. This first phase is crucial as the next time I'm going to cover the hull planking. The assembly part is pretty straightforward and the main attention points here are sanding and attention while gluing some pieces. First of all, no squareness tools seems to be needed while installing the bulkheads, as the reinforcement and the fold stack also manage to self-square the whole structure. The fit seems perfect. No glue needed at this point as reported in the manual. Also, the filling between bulkheads are useless in this case, as the number of bulkheads is more than sufficient to glue the planks later on. I'll leave you to the rest of the construction then, so grab your favorite drink and enjoy the video.
quotidiano, sia settimanale di reporting vario, sia appunto di realizzazione e aggiornamento delle guidance che sono quelle che poi vi mando ogni settimana a Giacomo.
Sì, buonasera a tutti. Io sono Giacomo, faccio parte del team data e sono a supporto appunto del team staff in questo passaggio da Clarity a Repliton, quindi sull'attivazione di tutti i tool e la gestione delle commesse.
Poi un budget settimanale delle guide uscita, perché come ho detto prima, appunto agli adjustment manager alle altre di mattina di farci delle.
Ma ovviamente se c'è la commessa che è proprio, se no non notti niente.
Quindi un profilo come senior consultant strategy design, quindi mi chiedo.
Allora, tu sei assolutamente libero di fare quello che vuoi, cioè il talent contributor come libero, cioè noi come operation azienda non puoi imporre niente, non è questo presupposto. Ma la figura di controllo centrale di operation, se lei lo faccia, non possiamo fare tutte le nostre intenzioni. Cioè tu immagini ragazzi, come sai, fai chiave oggi, non utilizzare.
Chi è ferie è il tuo responsabile diretto.
Ma per integrare e viceversa, perché ovviamente io invece ho ricevuto 15 che mi chiedevano ma non hai abilitato a replica.
Ciao guys, today I'm going through the most complex phase of building any model ship, applying the first layer of planks on the bulkheads. As I already anticipated in the previous episodes, I'm going to follow the given instruction as much as I can to see if there are any steps that might be too hard or not that comprehensible for a beginner model maker. The keel you see me applying at this point is made of pearwood. It will be reinforced later on with other two parts made still of pearwood. Even though pearwood is a very hard wood, be sure to handle this with care.
Sacco di donne sempre incazzate, come vampiri, come licantropi, sempre nervosi, che vedevano tutto nero, come hanno trovato il caso dei cessi, berdata, ripeto. Ma lei è finita la trasmissione? No, non ha detto questo. Ciao Alessandro, ciao.
Before starting to apply the first planking, I noticed that the planks do not have all the same thickness. At this stage, this does not bother me much, to be honest. What I do is to use the thickest planks first, as the curvature is more pronounced on the top. The first planking of the Sherbourne of 1763 by Vanguard models is just for filling purposes.
Però scusami, face sitting prevede che ti mettono il culo in faccia oppure anche altre parti del corpo?
It does not have to be perfect, since it won't be visible at the end. No filling between planks seems to be required thanks to the 17 bulkheads and other smaller fillings in the bow section. The instruction warns that you should be able to fit at least 12 planks for this model ship. I did not trim the planks at the stern section of the model. A slight trim is required for almost all the planks at the bow level.
Senza avere un minimo di coscienza. C'entra il portavoce del PD adesso, non c'entra niente il portavoce
The instructions don't mention to lay the cardboard plank, but I find this to be a useful step to follow in any model ship I build. The last plank is the hardest to apply, but take your time and won't be a rocket science project. I cut it to shape without using any particular guide. Some adjustments with a light sanding paper are required at the end of the process.
Gli studenti che menano i poliziotti, il servizio, il problema pagato dagli elettori. Oggi c'è la notizia, Lo sai, ti lancio ieri. Sai che cosa vuol dire? Vuol dire realisticamente che la gestione dell'edilizia è stata super. Sono ragazzi, quelli che si sono incatenati, sono quelli dei centri sociali lavorativi. Devono essere comunque, devono essere incatenati. Come mai le associazioni LGBTQ+ non si battono come.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. I saw that more than 85% of you who watched my video didn't subscribe yet. Tagliamare exists only thanks to its subscribers. So if you like what I do, if you like my content, please consider subscribing to the channel and to like my videos to support me. Thank you and goodbye. Ciao guys, today I go through the second layer of planks for the Sherbourne model ship by Vanguard Models. What you're going to see here is quite similar to what you saw already in the previous video of the first planking. The logic is pretty much the same. The differences here are that you're not going to nail your plank directly to the bulkheads, but you're just going to push them against the first layer. Before we start, I want to show you a detail. Here, then, part of the pearwood bulwarks. I believe it was a bit better to slightly change the shape of this piece because, as we know, the hull is not straight, and at this point there is relatively a large curve. In this case, this creates a small step that you can see at the bottom of the bulwark. I start with applying the first planks from the bulwark, tapering at least the plank to 3 mm towards the bow, without much measuring at this point. Having applied the first planking helps me visualize the numbers of planks I should expect to have and more or less the shape I should give to them. The point where I should start tapering the plank can be measured starting from the largest gap between the bulwark and the plank, and then you can simply lay the plank to the keel and check the point that intersects with the bulwark. Believe me, it's harder to explain. This gives you the 2 points of the cut. For holding the plank still, you can use both custom pins that have similar thickness of your plank or just use regular pin. I prefer using these huge fake metal pins. I then start with the garboard strake, which is the first plank from the keel. I do not taper this plank, and I add 2 more from here which I slightly taper toward the bow. At this point I can start measuring the perimeter of all the bulkheads, or better, the distance between the 2 planks from the bulwark and from the keel, to understand how many planks should fit in each of them. This is a step you might already know from other video I made about the hull planking. This step is pretty straightforward and is very helpful. For hull this small is maybe even the best method out there. You might find yourself in a similar situation like mine where you can fit 5.5 planks of 4 mm in the master bulkhead. That half plank is a problem because it would be too little compared to other planks, so I need to reduce a bit the size of the other planks right in the middle basically. So to achieve that, I need to reduce the size of the whole plank. I use a Proxon KS230 circular saw at this point to bring the planks to 3 mm instead of the original 4 mm. The last plank is the showdown where all your measurement mistakes come to light. It's not because there is something wrong, but with straight planks like this, you are going to accumulate small errors which will end up transforming your last plank into a weird shaped plank. Not a big deal though. In this case, my last plank is not even that weird. Be sure to fix the tape to your working mat so it won't move during the cutting process. I shaped the plank using a knife freehand and then I sand it while trying to fit it. Kind of a trial and error game. You can also use a French curve ruler at this point. If the plank is slightly bigger than the slot it should fit in, it's perfectly fine. Now that you have all the elements for correctly completing the hull, you can sand it down. You can sand it down manually or using a mouse sander. In this case I do it manually since the planks are not that thick. For finishing I use shellac. You can find it online in two versions, already prepared or that you can prepare yourself. I use a small brush to cover the whole hull. It's not very common to use a brush, I know, but I find it very useful to cover all the small spots. After applying the first coat, I sand it and I apply the second coat. I use a 2/0 metal sponge for doing the sanding process. Using this won't actually really sand the hull like with a sandpaper, but it will give a nice smooth finish. You're going to love this. Finally, the two whales. Those are not that easy to install. First, because you don't have many anchor points in that precise spot, and second, because I believe the shape of them is not 100% accurate. I use 2 small drops of cyanoacrylate to fix it to the bow, and then I use white glue to glue the rest. And that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the planking of the Sherbourne by Vanguard models. Subscribe to the channel to support me, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao guys, and welcome back to this new episode on the Sherbourne. Today I'm gonna show you how I'm working on all the little details of this model. Here I'm showing you how I'm gluing the little numbers that go in the keel of the hull. These pieces are made of brass and are very small, so be careful and try to handle them with care, especially if you're using tweezer to grab them.
Questa era la voce. Ma io ho detto, ma che ne sai tu? Ma che ne sai tu? Dal tuo appartamento delle case popolari di Torino. Benissimo, l'ha fatta apposta per poi lo sapeva, ha lasciato, pensava che sarà, e questo pazzesco perché non.
So the main reference point you have to align the inner bulwarks are the gun ports over here. Let me take this out. Like this one, there is one over here. There is one over here. And one over here. The patterns are designed to sit just above the engraved deck. So if you find that there is a gap, do not worry, it's intentional. There will be another piece pattern that will cover any gaps. The objective of this piece is to be aligned with the gun ports. So if you have any space like this over here, at the bottom here, don't worry. These two are the front patterns for the inner bulwark. These two pieces needs to be bent before you apply them. So we are gonna soak them in water for a couple of minutes and then we will bend them using a soldering iron. I'm using this wood which is part of the Amati kit for bending planks. I mean, you can make it one by yourself. It's a pretty standard shape for planks. And I'm using a normal iron this time.
Massima del giorno.
I carefully glue the gunwales in place. I do that by using PVA glue so that I have more or less some room for adjusting them into position. Be very careful when handling those pieces because pearwood is very sensitive on the line of the grain, so it will break if you tension in the wrong spot. To glue the swivel gun posts into position, you have some pre-engraved position on the top of each gunwale. There are 3 on each side of the front and 3 on each side of the rear. I used PVA wood glue to fix the parts. The pre-engraved slots are very useful, so you don't need to use super glue. I glued the stern counter rails with PVA glue. I used the clamps to fix it into position so that the glue could dry. Be very careful because you could unintentionally damage the gun wheels. I pre-painted the stern transom rail, even though I had to sand a little bit the transom later on. I painted using black paint all the gun port eyebolts, and I used Chino gel for fixing them. Before doing so, it is advisable to re-drill the eyebolts positions with a 0.8mm drill bit, just to make sure the holes are open, but be very careful not to drill so far as to come out the other side. From this point onward, you can start working on all the details. In this work session I showed you a lot of details. Building them was not stressful, it was very relaxing and enjoyable actually. Everything is built to fit, and it is incredible how pieces work together and how detailed the instructions are. Right now I'm working on the cannons, and I love this pre-engraved carriage. The level of details of each piece is incredible. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao guys, today we're gonna be talking about all the details you see here. So from the cannons to the gratings, the pumps, and so on and so forth. So as you might have noticed, those are not glued yet, so we are going to be talking about each of them in details in a minute. So the first thing I want you to notice is the difference in colors. As you can see, the inner bulwark, some of the details are slightly of different color compared to the outer planks of the hull. As you see here, you can see also there is a small spot over there. This is because I will apply another coat of shellac to all the details and to the outer planks of the hull. I'm not sure yet if I want to also apply shellac onto the deck, because I really like this shade of this kind of yellowish color. I think it fits perfectly. So I just want the inner part of the hull, the inner bulwark, to reach the same level of saturation and color of the outer one. Another thing in terms of color you might have noticed already is that I didn't paint the hull. I left it with this natural color. I think it's great. And another thing is missing from a hull perspective are the nails. Consider that since the part of the hull was supposed to be white, was supposed to be painted white, in the instruction manual nobody says to nail down all those planks. So you can see just the nail marks on the upper part of the hull, like so. So the point here is, I'm not sure I will actually apply the nails to the hull. I don't know if it's something I want to do right now, or I will do it later. But it's something you can certainly do if you feel like. The hull is not that big, so it's not a problem if you want to do it. It won't require you that much time. I really love the pearwood when it's combined with shellac, when it has this shellac finish. I think it's a very wonderful color for ship models. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's go and see each items in detail. Let's start with the rudder. The rudder is made of two pieces. The rudder itself that you see here is the main piece, and the tiller. As you know, I didn't paint the hull white, so also the rudder, it's not white. It was supposed to be white, but it will be using shellac instead, so I will give that natural look to the whole ship. The three hinges you see here are just glued, and as you can see, those are false hinges. These three pieces that are coming out of the rudder are the rudder itself. And you can see three other brass pieces over here. You can appreciate the same style here on the boat. At the end of the boat you can see the other three pieces of the rudder hinge, but they are actually fake ones because you see they do not continue on the external part. I can say it's a very clever design. I wouldn't even thought about it, and I think it works because you won't actually see this face of the keel. So very good job from this point of view, and all the details of the rudder have been kept. So you can see also the little nails that are simulated on the hinges. Very nice. The other important piece I want to tell you about are the gratings. There are 4 of them. Here you can see 3 because I already glued this one, the first one. And so basically I think those are a little bit out of scale because the whole of the gratings are a bit too wide. I would have made them a little tighter, but it's fine. And the other thing is that from the instruction manual you're supposed to put another piece underneath which increase the height of the grating. I think that is a bit out of scale as well. I decided to keep them at this height, more or less. I think it's pretty fine. I won't put that much glue because I might decide to change them in the future. This is the really only pieces I'm not sure about this model kit. But I'm going to install them anyway. Let's move to the cut heads. Those 2 pieces are really interesting because are made of different little pieces. The cut heads in particular, the main structure is made of 2 pieces. Those have, I don't know if you can actually see it, but let me zoom a bit. They have a pattern here which is laser cut. It's pretty great. And then you have other 3 pieces that complete the whole cut head. Be sure to remove and to file down all the black parts of the laser cuts because those can be very disturbing. I leave them a bit, like as you can see here there is a little bit of black, but it's pretty fine because it gives an old look. So it doesn't matter if you don't file the whole thing. It's pretty fine to leave a little bit of black over here. Then we have the 2 belaying racks. There we go. Those are pretty nice, very small. I don't know if you can notice from this distance, but those pins are made of brass and are painted black. And it's nice because those are very small. I think if I don't zoom, you can notice how small they are compared to the size of my hand. Here it should be on focus and you noticed how small they are. You can't even notice they are made of brass because they are too small, I mean. You can see there is a bit of yellow, and I should probably give another hand of black paint over here, but more or less it's fine. Let's move to the pump. We have two deck pumps. You can see them here that I just painted the handle. The whole structure of the pump is just a little dowel and it's not painted. I'm not sure I'm supposed to paint it actually. And I will see how it fits with the overall structure of the model and the overall colors. I'm not sure I will paint them or if I shall put another hand of shellac on this. You must have probably noticed that in part 1 of this video I was working on the handle. I didn't show you the step-by-step building of this pump because it's pretty easy once you made the handle. The handle is basically made of 3 pieces, are 3 brass pieces that are glued together, and those are fixed using 2 pins. You can't see them actually because it's all black and those are very small. So I think it's a clever idea, a clever design, very well done, nothing to say about them. Let's move to the cannons. Cannons are really the pieces that surprised me. These are 3-pounder cannons. And the barrel is made of resin. You can't really tell it's made of resin because the quality is very high. I didn't even bother painting it. It looks pretty fine to me. The carriage is made of 4 pieces. You have the front and rear axle and the side structures. Here I'm not sure you can see the cup squares because it's black and black. But those, as you have seen in the first part of this video, are painted black. I think it's a good strategy, it's a good design because those are very small, so you also have some holes that simulates the nails on the wheels, and this is very nice. You also have the quan, I think it's called the quan, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, so sorry about that. And then you have all the metal fittings that we will be using for fixing the cannon to the sides of our ship. Very nice indeed for such a small piece. And here we also have the windlass pole post. I removed the 3mm laser cut sheet. I painted the PE parts black and then I removed them from the 0.4mm brass edge sheet. I glued the pole brackets into each slot and I inserted the pole and then lock it into place with a brass pin. Very easy to make. Here be sure to file the sides because this will be very black and you want a uniform, always a uniform color of each piece. Here you have the bowsprit bits and the belaying pin rail glued together, as you can see. Of this you have actually 2 pieces. You have a spare part, that's very nice because I broke the first one. And yeah, that's it for these 2 pieces. You also have 2 stairs that go on the sides of the ship. Those are pretty easy to make, nothing really special. You have the guides, it's very well explained in the instruction manual and are a bit harder than the other pieces but still doable. The next piece is the companionway. I can say this is very well executed. It's made of 4 pieces, each for its side, plus the roof. In the roof here you can see there are 2 pieces. Those are very thin brass pieces that glued very well to the top of the companionway. Nothing really like rocket science. I just painted it black before gluing them, and that's pretty much it. You also need to install the 2 eye bolts for the door handles to complete the assembly, and I think it looks very nice. I think in the whole model you have this use of engraving with the laser machine, which is amazing. This gives a really nice touch to the whole model. The next step will be to then install all of these pieces to the model. So we have all the gratings over here. I'm not gluing them, it's just to see how they would fit. It's just for testing the fit of the whole model. Okay. So this is pretty much it. I think I still have to work on the windlass that should fit here before putting this piece over here. The main windlass for the Sherbourne is pretty simple. It's just 3 parts. Shouldn't be like very difficult. The windlass itself is made of resin. The main part is made of resin and the support is made of wood. So I don't think it will be a big deal. I still have to work a bit better on the belaying racks over here because, as you could see, they couldn't fit very well. So I think I have to fix them a little bit before gluing them. And that's pretty much it. Let's glue all the parts and I'll see you in a minute.
Infiniti, a spostamenti senza sosta da un paese all'altro, da un'emergenza. Emira, la moglie di Roberto Del Rosso, è già sveglia, è in casa con i bambini. Sarebbero dovuti salire anche loro su in hotel, dato che le scuole sono chiuse a causa.
So guys, this is all for now. This is the Sherbourne part 2 video about details. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and press the like button under this video. It really means a lot to me and is something that pushes me forward in making those kind of productions. So thank you and I will see you in the next video. Ciao guys, today we are building anchors. In the plans you find in the kit of the Sherbourne there are no drawing of the anchors. So I was lucky enough, Labelle has a pair of anchors which are the same length of the one used in the Sherbourne in the correct scale of 163. So I started copying those drawings and gluing them in a 1.5mm brass sheet. I used a Proxon saw with a blade with super thin teeth for metal. Couldn't be more precise than this with the saw, but this was good enough for starting refining the piece. I secured the anchor with one of the clamper of a Matic Kills holder and I started refining the piece with the Dremel rotating tool. With the disc I'm using, you won't get to all the corners That's why I use my vise to fix the anchor into position, and then I start refining with a small file. You want to get as close as possible to what you see on paper. The paper doesn't stick that much on metal, so from time to time I add a little bit of super glue. To refine the outer side of the anchor, I used a disc sander. Be very careful here because you risk that the piece of anchor is forced down. So you need to fill the small gap between the piece and the sanding table with a small piece of wood. For the other smaller pieces of the anchors, called flukes, I used a 0.5mm brass sheet. Those are in fact slightly thinner than the throat and the shank of the anchor. I used a metal scissor at this point, which can be very useful. When working brass or wood, every tool does a specific job, so you shouldn't try to refine flukes using just the scissors. The last step should always be the refining using a file. Let's get to soldering now. Two important concepts here. First is soldering paste. You should always apply it before doing anything else. And second, always consider applying a little bit of tin on the face where you're pressing the soldering iron. This will also melt the tin underneath. For the burnishing I use the Amomig burnishing fluid. I don't recommend it because it does not burnish the tin. So as you can see, the tin has not changed color. What I did is try to remove as much tin as possible so it is not noticeable with the naked eye. So the reason why I decided to build these anchors from scratch is because the one that you find in the kit are very fragile. They literally broke after I pulled them out from the box. So if you're not considering following this video to build these guys from scratch, be very careful when you start working on the anchors. Right now I'm exploring other products for doing so. And as you've seen, paint is not one of them. For the wooden stock, I used the one included in the kit, but as I already glued the two pieces together, I had to hammer the anchor into it. What you're seeing in the video now is an efficient way to build the ring of the anchor. I should have done it a little bit larger, to be honest. The ropes I'm using is literally the smallest one I can build, and as you can see, it's not that thin. So this contributed to shrink the ring hole even more. The anchor rigging is pretty standard, you can find a lot of images online for the anchor's knot.
E credetemi, pensare a differenza che Filippo la droga non la tocca neanche, e lui si sente onnipotente, imbattibile, il numero uno. Ma no, non va bene così, perché tu facendo così spacchi tutto. A me mi hanno scritto tanta gente su Instagram, ma perché non torni con Filippo? Ma io ritornerei con Filippo tutta la vita, perché io, tra parentesi, cioè tra parentesi, io gli voglio ancora bene, gli ho sempre voluto bene. Buona serata.
Questo programma può contenere riferimenti espliciti e si rivolge ad un pubblico adulto e non è adatto ai minori. La zanzara.
The only thing to be careful here are how much rope you have left for the anchor. I was a bit too short on that. The plans and instruction manual at this point are very general and do not go into detail about how to fix the anchor. Plans are missing a piece right here, which I'm building right now. The anchor is connected to a small block connected to the cut head, which allow for the anchor to go up or down. If you guys like the video, press the like button, subscribe to the channel to support me, and I will see you in the next video.